feminine energy is really about collaboration. It's about community. It's about creativity.
Hello, and welcome to In the Rising podcast. My name is Bettina, and this is the platform I love to share what makes us not only tick as a community, but what makes us rise up, leaving behind that shame-blame game that does nothing for us. And my guest today, Julie Foucht, is just one of those women.
I find your unique gifts very interesting, but I wanted you to share them like with your own words,
not just
if you don't
great
mind.
at coaching, but really has tuned in, tapped
First, I'm
in
a super grandma.
to her own divine feminine energy.
But beyond
and actually
that,
feeling comfortable
really what I
being
do
in a
and
feminine
what I'm
place,
here to
which
do is
when
I
we think
walk
about business
between
may
the
not always
physical
be the
world
first
and the
place we think
spiritual
of.
world.
So I invite you to
And
listen to
in
today's
that,
episode
I have a
and
passion for
just learn
helping
so
women
much
make
from
money.
a person
And
that's
the best
really,
way I've
really
discovered to
has such
help
a
women
big
have
heart.
more money is to help them start their own businesses
Mhm.
and build their businesses. Because so many women start a business and then don't make very much money. So I'm really passionate about women making a lot of money. And what I've discovered over the last 20 years of doing this work, that we can pretend to be men, right? We can put on our tough face and we can push ourselves and we can grind and we can force it, and we will end up exhausted
Mhm.
and not having much fun with our business. Or we can tap into the divine feminine, tap into our connection with source, create a spiritual relationship with the energy of money, and allow that abundance to come to us. And it's much easier to build a successful, fulfilling, validating, soulful business from that space
Mhm.
than it is. I mean, like, I don't know. I can push for a little bit, but I don't like living my life in push. And I don't want my business to be about push. So I really like this being in the feminine and having spaciousness. And since I started doing that, I make more money. So there is a reward to it as well.
Yes. So being in your true place. And so with being in, for some people, they automatically clue into that kind of lingo, this kind of conversation. When we say we are in our masculine energy, which we all both have, and then our feminine energy, which we both have, and then, with the different gender identities, but really being in a feminine place is for women who identify as women, or, whatever you identify as that gender. It is a little bit of a softer place. Like when we think about why softer, but in my view, how I've described it is that it's still strong. It's not weak. That sometimes we say in our language that feminine is weakness. It is just as strong. There is a lot of creativity, but there are some different variations. Would you like to describe in your own words masculine energy and feminine energy?
Absolutely. And when I think about feminine energy, it can be very soft, very tender, and very fierce. And there's a lot of mama bear energy that I have. And so, I can be like, yeah, we'll do it your way and we'll go this way and we'll do this. And boy, you cross the line. And I'm going to be like, no, that's unacceptable. And especially if you're threatening one of my people or one of my clients, it's like, no, that's unacceptable. So like there's these different parts. Feminine energy is really about collaboration. It's about community. It's about creativity. It's about tapping in, going deeper into our psyche, into our unconscious, into our past lives, creating more space. And then the mask and the beingness of who we're being. And the masculine energy is about the doing. It's about taking action. It's about moving forward in the physical world. And if you have one without the other, you can't actually build success.
Mm-hmm.
If you are building all in the masculine and the do, it's like you've got a riverbed with no water in it. And eventually you're going to die of thirst. If you are in your feminine all the time, and you're meditating, and you're connecting with source, and you're doing animal walks, but you never tell anybody you're in business, you never let your masculine take action, it's like a river just flowing everywhere with no banks to it. And we end up just flooded and not getting anywhere. So it takes this dance. And the way I like to look at it is the feminine is made to birth new products, birth new programs, birth new ways of doing things. The masculine is designed to support the feminine. And when you allow your divine masculine to come in and support your feminine, then your feminine rises, and because the masculine's attached, the masculine rises. When you lead with the masculine, what happens is it becomes a bully to the feminine, and they both go into lower energy. Mm-hmm. So we lead with the feminine, and we use both the masculine and feminine, and it becomes this beautiful dance.
So with that dance, where would you say you've always been aware of that, or how did you become a little bit more sensitive to that?
That's such a great question. Now, several years ago, when I started my coaching practice, I had this really fun little practice, and my husband's business supported us. And then the housing crash happened. And my husband, the last client he ever had in his business, decided that they were going to leave California and declare bankruptcy rather than pay their bills. So all of a sudden, his business crashed. I was making a couple $1,000s a month in my coaching practice, and I thought, I need to figure out how to make some money with this. Mm-hmm. Because his profession is closely connected to the housing, right? So I hired a coach. I learned to market. I learned funnels. I learned webinars. I learned how to build free gifts. I learned all the things and all the formulas. And I pushed and I did it. And I was just about, when I hired her, I tripled my income in 9 months by doing this. But what happened is I started to get really tired and started to feel really unenthusiastic about it, and really unenthusiastic about teaching it. And I was really close to my first 6-figure year. I was just over $90,000, or maybe just over $95,000 for the year. And I was gonna make my first 6-figure year because it was early in October. And what happened was the universe had another plan for me, and I got rear-ended. And it wasn't the first hit, it was the second time the big truck hit me that really screwed up my back. And I went from working 12-hour days, 6 days a week, because I was determined to get to 6 figures, to being able to do 1 to 2 client calls a day, and then lay on ice and go to the chiropractor. And I was in so much pain. But in that, I began to listen, and I started listening to the whispers, and I started to hear this voice saying, there's a better way, there's a different way, there's a better way for women. At the same time, I had just joined a mastermind group of 6- and 7-figure leaders in the coaching self-development industry. And woman after woman would say to me, yeah, I built to 6 figures and then had adrenal fatigue. I built to 7 figures and got breast cancer. I built to multiple 7 figures and couldn't get out of bed for 4 months. And it was amazing in this group of 150 people, how many women said, I'm done. I don't know where I'm going, but I can't do this. It's making me sick to do this. And so I had this influence of hearing this, and I had my experience of source saying, stop, you're going the wrong way. And I just opened. Now I've always had a spiritual side, right? I've read tarot cards for 25 years and journaled and had done dream work and all of that stuff. And I would sneak it into my coaching. My clients would be like, oh, that was much deeper than I expected. I thought we were going to like talk about how many times I should post on Facebook. And what I was hearing was I needed to bring that back into my business. And I needed to not only bring it in, but be open about it. And that was super, super scary. Mm-hmm. I thought I was going to blow up my business at that point, but I didn't have any choice. And as I've been teaching how to build your business from this spiritual viewpoint, I've had so much more fun. My clients are more successful. They're making more money. I'm making more money. It's just become a coming home, like this is what I was always meant to do.
Yeah.
And it just took me that pathway of I had to go learn the masculine piece first so that I had something that I would know. How do I want to put this? Because it's not even like tweaking it. It's like I had to know what was so that I could create something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To how to up level that, but in a truer sense, to at least understand it from that point of view. You also said in your background that you had a little bit of a different upbringing than, say, maybe your brothers. And I think that's something a lot of people can relate to. Can you expand just to where you're comfortable, just a little bit on that? Because I think it is so important to where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was born, my parents wanted a boy so badly that they didn't have a girl's name picked out. And so I got named after my mother because, they didn't want to, I don't know, maybe they didn't want to spend any time thinking about it. And then I had two brothers, and I have got a couple of sisters who are even younger. But my dad said to us one day as adults, he said, I raised my boys to get along in the world, and I raised my girls to be taken care of. And so I grew up with this idea that I didn't have the same value as my brothers. I wasn't allowed, we lived in the mountains. My brothers, every year would go out and shovel the neighbors' roofs to keep them from collapsing and then get paid for it. And I wasn't allowed to do that because it wasn't girls' work. I wasn't allowed to work at the family business, the family gas station. It wasn't girls' work. I had to do my brother's chores before I went to my job because they were gone to their jobs. Like it was this really, and my parents, I know, we can go back to all of that. They did the best they could, but that was a real wounding place for me. Now, what that did was it pushed me to develop the skills so that I could disprove the wound that I was less valuable, mm-hmm. Right? And so I had to learn, okay, how do I open to money? How do I create more money in my life? How do I build success? How do I market myself? How do I stand up and say, hey, I'm good, right? So many women are like, ooh, don't brag. We're taught not to brag. In my community, we brag every Wednesday. It's a big deal because women are taught not to talk about themselves. Mm-hmm. And so I had to learn those things. And it was pushing against that wound of I'm not as good that allowed me to learn this stuff so well. Mm-hmm. So the wound really has some gifts in it when we look at them.
Yeah. And I feel that's why reading your story resonated as well as it did, because I'm an only child, but I also was raised German and American. I'm in my 40s. But there definitely, when I look back, there was an idea that it is expected that whoever I marry will out-earn me. It was expected that I will achieve. And I'm not saying that wasn't pushed, but from certain cultural views, there was just of this is, you will give up, you will stop working, you will do this, you will do that. When you have children, we will have this spotless house. It was just part of the culture. And not that all of that is bad. You should take care of your home and your children, but it does not mean that you forsake yourself necessarily to do that. I think underneath it, that was something that I had internalized for a long time. You are, and I've read your, go ahead.
Let me say something about that, because it's not just from the family. That's a society thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we carry in our DNA. Even if we had families that were like, no, girls are equal, go for it, do it. We still carry in our DNA the ancient, the thousands of years of family history of what a woman's role is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we really need to acknowledge and clear from our society, so that our children and grandchildren don't have to carry that forward.
Yeah. And on that note, the more, because I love science, I'm a scientist by heart, right? But I also the more I learn about science, the more I have a deeper spiritual connection, because, it just to me makes sense. The pieces fit together. They're not opposite. And when I do, and I even listen to some MDs, they're starting to come up more and more about what, like epigenetics things. Why do some things always happen in the same family? Is it always substance abuse, or that there's been even trauma, sexual trauma? Why this happens generation? But I've read your raves, your testimonials, and they said she's so intuitive. She's just so intuitive. Is this something, we hear about intuition and so, but how, when reading that, how can a woman say, or an entrepreneur, how can I just start to listen more to myself?
That's really a great question. And I think for a lot of us, we're taught not to listen to ourselves. We're taught not to listen to the voice in our head that talks to us. And I think there's a couple of ways. So the first thing is, in our society, we're really taught that it's everything from the head up is important, right? And the body is just I don't know, it's a nuisance, right? There's no crying in the boardroom. Emotions have no place in business. Those are the messages we get. And so the first thing is really just start listening to your emotions. If you start to feel tense and upset, like, it may be because somebody's stepping on your values, somebody's stepping on your beliefs, or it may be a sense that there's danger. And we've got to start listening to those things. The other thing is, you can listen to your body. If you're trying to make a decision and you're talking about it and you're leaning forward, that's a sign that it's a yes. Right? If it's like this, with your arms crossed and leaning backwards, and your body goes to this position, those are really no's of your intuition telling you that somewhere this doesn't fit, it doesn't work. So we can begin to listen to our body. And then for me, it started when I was 7 and lived in a haunted house. But that's a whole other story. I'll tell you at another time. It really started when I started to tap in and do some deep meditation. And in that meditation, and I was doing dream work, and I was listening to the different parts of myself. We all have, the inner child part, and we all have a mother part, and there are different parts of us. There are protector parts of us. There's the inner teenager within us. So I just started to listen to those different parts of myself and have conversations. And that led me into having conversations with my highest self, the part that touches source, God, the universe, whatever language you want to use there. And as I conversed with my highest self, I began to see the spiritual planes. Mm-hmm. For some people, I've worked with a lot of women. For some people, they can visualize that. It's really a visualization. For some people, it's all auditory. And for others, it's just a feeling, a sensation that they can't actually put words to. Sometimes it's just colors, but it's beginning to learn how to follow those streams and trust yourself. If there's a voice in your head that says this is not a good thing, trust that, regardless of what everybody else outside of you is saying. Mm-hmm. If there's a part of you that is leaping for joy at something, trust that. We don't. We're taught, no, I have to make a pros and cons list.
Mm-hmm.
Where our intuition is saying, do it, do it, do it. This is going to be so good for you. And you're like, well, it will take 3 hours a week. And, like, your head is not designed to make decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Your head is designed to collect data.
Yeah.
So use your body, tap into the energy. And I use all kinds of meditations to do that tapping in. Does that answer your question?
It does, because, when you, for women, whether they're entrepreneurs or not, to start to go in that route may seem scary, because they're like, no, that's woo woo. And I can't go there, because then I'm not seen as professional, or I'm at the bottom and have nothing else. But it's really when you, if you are a spiritual person, which I believe, some of us don't, but when we are, and we can use that, there is, regardless of what we believe, there's so much power above us that we are in this bigger community when you can tap into so much energy. When we start to explain it, like when you think about someone and they call, that's a connection. When you think about that, you start to realize that you are already behaving in those manners. You just didn't know what it was called, or you didn't recognize it, right?
Yeah. We're all made of energy. Everything is made of energy. It's just how that energy is put together. I don't know very much about quantum physics, but I know that, right? I know a few things. One, we're all made of energy. And so really what I'm talking about is, how do we tap into that energy to find the right connections? And if you're in business, not every person you're not meant to serve every person. Not every client is right for you, and you're not right for every client. But it's, how do we tap in and find those connections energetically that are right? How do we tap in and find the courses that are right? How do we find the mentors that are right? And I can tell you personally, there's been so many times where, because I have my own podcast, so, I'll interview somebody and I'll be like, I want to hire them almost every time. And it's because I've created this energetic connection with them, and I want to stay in contact with them. And it takes me a couple of days to really have to go through some emotional waves to get to the point where I go, no, I can love that person and what they brought to the podcast, but I don't need to work with them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I have this instant when I meet somebody, like, I want to buy from you, I want to hire you, I want to, and if I followed that, I would just be down all kinds of rabbit holes.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's like, okay, now I have to take a breath. I have to get out of that excitement. I have to tap into what's really in my soul. And in that place, I can decide what's a yes and what's a no for me.
Yes, absolutely. And so what I also like is when you do use the deeper area, the spiritual, that you can make greater gains faster. Like everything is almost on super lightning. And I'll share this real quick with you, because I haven't shared it on my podcast, but there was a time, very, very deep, very bad thing. I was just a mess. And I had the counselor. And then I also had a person that looked at energy, looked at spirit, used tarot cards. And by pulling in how I felt energetically, at 6 months, I was done with both. And both of them on the same day said, I have not seen someone make so much progress in such a short amount of time. And as I've done, because I do study the quantum physics, as I study more and more, I realize the supersonic speed of when they're like, how can you do that so quickly? It's because you're starting to tap in.
Right. And all you have to do is teach your body once how to do it.
Yeah.
So if one time you made $10,000 a year in your business, your body knows how to make $10,000. Then you tap into the energy and you say, okay, now let's shorten the timeline. Let's do it in 6 months instead of a year. And then we shorten it again and again and again until you're at 10,000 a month. Because you already know once you've done it. And I love that piece of how do you accelerate? So, you did a piece of healing and your body went, got it. And then you just went into the energy work and shortened it so that you were 6 months done. Well, that's my understanding of it. You study quantum physics. You probably understand it better.
But no, I definitely feel that way. And when I talk to other people who've gone through something like that, we all have different speeds, right? But it's just like, you can feel like it's not like, if you've gone to therapies and all this for years, suddenly it's like it clicks when you're tapping into that spirit thing. You mentioned your podcast. I'd love for you to expand on that for the audience to hear, what are you doing with your podcast?
Oh, thank you. So we're actually rebranding right now. So by the time this airs, we'll be completely rebranded. It's the Art of Feminine Business. And I talk to women business leaders from many different viewpoints, many different backgrounds. Sometimes it's talking about this stuff that you and I are talking about today, the energy work, the spirituality of being in business. Sometimes it's the practical, what do you do with your LinkedIn profile? Mm-hmm. The practical masculine parts of being in business. And I've been podcasting, oh my gosh, a number of years, maybe 10 years. Nah, not that long. Anyway, a number of years. I don't know what number. And my first podcast, I took a break from, I took a 6-month hiatus and 3 years later came back and started the new podcast. And I have just a really great team to support me in that podcast, so that you can find it on Spotify, you can find it on iTunes, you can find it on my website, because we link to it there every week, and we put out a new episode every week.
Excellent. And then you also had a free gift available on your website. Please share.
So the gift is the Art of Feminine Marketing Guidebook. It shares a little bit more about my story, how I came to do this work, but then it gives you 7 key components to really up-level your marketing and up-level your business, and really design your business in a way that honors your feminine and allows you to have the freedom to both build a 6-figure or a 7-figure business, and also spend time with the people you love, mm-hmm. doing the things that you want to do. So we don't have to give up our life for our business. We don't have to give up our business for our life. And so that's all in the guidebook. It's absolutely free. You can go to my website, or I'll give you the link so you can put it in the show notes.
Yes.
And download it there.
Absolutely. So I will have all of that. One of my last questions I love to ask people is, with everything you've done, where do you see yourself rising up to? What's in the rising still for Julie?
Oh, such a good question. Nobody has ever asked me that on a podcast. So really the vision I have, I'm just going to tap into it. I really see myself expanding my understanding of how do we operate in the feminine, in that empowering thousands and thousands of other women to do the same. I see myself doing more writing, published a book in the middle of the pandemic. I published my first completely finished published book. There are others that never got finished. And so I see myself needing to do more writing in order to reach the women I want to reach. I also see myself creating, through my work of empowering other women to create their own businesses, I see that magic spreading. Mm-hmm. And, more magic in the planet, more manifesting for women, more heart-centered work being done in the world. And I am meant to be one of the facilitators of the change that is happening.
I invite you to go to Julie's website, learn more about her, listen to her own podcast, where she just, again, interacts with other phenomenal human beings, making a difference. And if you feel that coaching would be something for you, something that would help you learn, okay, I'm right here now, what steps can I do to move forward? And as always, if you felt this podcast was beneficial to you and you know someone whose ears would just burn and need to hear this message from Julie today, go ahead and share it. 5-star review if you're listening to it on a podcast. If you are listening to it on YouTube, go ahead and hit the subscribe and also share. And until next time, let's keep building one another up.